Hello, and welcome to another episode of Shampoo and Booze, a podcast about making a living on Airbnb. This is episode number 6 at shampooandbooze.com. Today, Jay and I are talking to our friend Bekah, who started an Airbnb rental in New Orleans in 2012. So she's been doing this for 3 years, and she has a lot of great experience that we're excited to hear about. So, Bekah, you are actually the reason we started calling our podcast Shampoo and Booze because you started I'll say the radio-friendly version here, the stuff that my renters leave behind hashtag.
Yes.
Because you were finding like crazy stuff in the fridge.
People leave the weirdest things. Mostly, honestly, I get left a lot of liquor, like in large quantities, because most of our guests fly and they can't take it with them. And there's a corner store that sells that has a liquor license. So I end up with fifths of liquor, underpants, a lot of eggs, frozen waffles, that sort of thing.
Yeah, nice.
Oh, we eat like kings when people leave. Like we do so well. People leave like organic cheese from the local co-op and stuff because they can't take it with them. So we usually have our like post-guest wine and cheese snack because that's what they left us.
Yeah, because we're the same way when we go and clean the house. We're always so excited, hoping that there's stuff to scavenge through and find. I love that food tastes so much is better when you find it from somebody else. Half gallons of milk. I love
it. Yeah, and like you said, eggs. I'm like, oh, nice. I don't have to buy these for the next week, you know?
Absolutely. I think we get some weird stuff left behind. Like there was a closet full of possibly stolen shirts. That was weird.
That is the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I really didn't know what to do with that. I don't even usually open the closet. No one ever leaves anything in there. And I opened it to like get the vacuum or something. And there were all these men's shirts in there and they all had like the anti-theft tag on them. There were like 4 or 5 of them. It was really bizarre. Come to New Orleans, have fun, take some shirts.
So I thought we'd just kind of start too on, and again, I don't know how much you want to talk about at your own rental, but feel free to be as specific as you want. But could you tell us about the place that you have up on Airbnb?
Sure. It is actually interior to the house that we live in. When we got the house, it was divided into 4 small 1-bedroom apartments, and we ended up converting 3 of them to just be the space for us, and we left the 4th intact. So it's interior to the house, but it has its own entrance on the outside.
Wow, so your house was 3 1-bedrooms. That's a 4 1-bedroom. Wow, that's amazing.
So how much work did you guys have to do on that building? And did you know from the get-go that you were going to have a rental?
No, we actually really, really, really didn't want a rental. I really didn't want to be a landlord for a long-term tenant. And the apartment was going to serve a completely different purpose when we got the house. It was supposed to be an art studio. There were all these other plans for it. And all the plans kind of fell apart. So the apartment itself was intact for quite some time. And we'd never heard of Airbnb or VRBO. We didn't know that was a thing. And it kind of happened by accident that the guy who bought the house next door, we met him. We were so excited to have a neighbor. And he's like, well, I won't really be here all that much. We're going to vacation here. And then, he described this vacation rental concept. And we were sort of dumbstruck because we don't travel much. So we had no idea this was the new, thing to do. And so that's what started me, getting me looking at it because I thought, well, this house should be making me money instead of, the world's most sunny closet, which is kind of what the apartment was. It was this beautiful space full of junk.
How much work did you do? Did you completely redo your house and the apartment, or was it ready to go when you bought it?
The house itself wasn't, because it had, 4 tiny kitchens and 4 tiny bathrooms and all these weird little doorways that were walled off. So we didn't do much except pull out two kitchens and 1 bathroom so that we would ourselves have a space that sort of resembled a functioning house, which it was 1 kitchen and 2 bathrooms and a guest room. And the apartment had a full kitchen and a full bathroom, but was in really poor shape. They'd all been rentals for probably 15, 20 years. Nothing had been updated. Luckily, my husband Brian's super, super handy. I am not. He is super handy. I'm on design detail. So he did have to do a lot of physical work to the space to make it rentable to anybody. You know, we had to redo the bathroom and do the floors and take down the walls. They were all lumpy from water damage. And, you know, once that was all fixed, it's really a sweet, spruced up little space. But it took a couple of months.
Okay, so it only took a couple months. It wasn't like years.
I'm surprised. So I think you started to rent about a year before we did, and we were, asking you a lot of questions, and you gave us a lot of advice. But just you sending us the photos of that place really inspired us. I mean, It looks so beautiful, all the white walls, and just it's very clean. I mean, is that something that you've always known how to do, or to make a space?
Not really. I live a sort of cluttered life with lots of stuff that I don't need, and stuff that doesn't have a place to be. And that's sort of how I've always been. And I knew that I really would have preferred that space to be as clean and pristine with not a lot of stuff in it as humanly possible, just because I like the way that looks. I just can't seem to get it done in my own life. I can't do it to my own house, but I knew I could do it to the rental. And I did look around the neighborhood and the city for other listings. And there was a really clear bent towards super cluttered Southern sort of, I don't know, lots of fleur-de-lis on the wall and lots of Saints gear and just kind of not my thing. And I wanted to make it look a very certain specific way to attract a certain kind of IKEA-loving young person.
Yeah, I think that we find a similar thing in our area where it's because we're like in the mountains and by a river. And so there's a lot of like country kitsch, and we're just with lots of trinkets and just stuff all over. And we're like, no. It's got to be. But I think you bring up a good point too, where the beauty of an Airbnb space is it's kind of like a hotel where nobody lives there, so there's not all your stuff. Like my office and my whatever living room is full of all our stuff and our projects and our whatever. But we love the Airbnb space because it's just like zen. It's like nobody's stuff is here, you know.
I spend as much time in there as I can. Just honestly, I love sitting in there because it's almost like a little vacation for myself, even to be in someone else's living room, even though technically it's mine. I really love sitting in that living room and just reading a book. It just feels great. Like I don't feel obligated to dust more things or move anything or add to it. It's just, I like to just have that sort of spare feeling. Someday maybe I'll do the rest of my house like that. I doubt it.
Yeah.
So here's a big question. It's for you because it's something that we were very afraid of when we started. So what were your expectations? Because the big thing about this is that you're putting a lot of time and money into getting a place it's ready to go. And so what were your expectations of it working or not?
Well, I didn't think it was going to work at all. I mean, we had to fix the space anyway because the space was such a mess. And we sort of figured worst case scenario, I will bite the bullet and put a long-term tenant in there. There are a lot of hospitals in the city. I thought maybe we could get residents coming in and out, like 3 months, 4 month leases, because it was furnished or I was furnishing it at the time. And we didn't spend a horrendous amount of money. I felt like the amount of money we spent would never end up being a loss because at worst I would absorb all that furniture to replace my crappy furniture in my house. I would just take all the new stuff for me and then rent the apartment. But it didn't feel like this better work or we won't get a return on this. Like it wasn't that much money. We didn't feel too much pressure. We really thought we'll be booked on the weekends in the fall. We'll be booked for Mardi Gras. We'll be booked for Jazz Fest. And no one will come here in the summer because coming to New Orleans in August is crazy. And we were incredibly, incredibly wrong because it went gangbusters immediately. And we were really, really shocked.
Yeah, I think we had a similar situation where we were like, if we make X amount a month, we'll be really happy. Well, we're just crazy books.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we were so surprised. I mean, kind of the minute the listing went up, the first week we were getting like 5 to 10 requests a day, and I just mentally couldn't even fathom the idea that someone wanted to stay in that space. And I felt like I had to pick and choose. It was so strange to me that people wanted to do that because, again, we had no idea how popular Airbnb really was. Like, we just assumed, maybe twice a month someone will want to stay in there and we'll just have done this work for the good of the house. We never thought we were going to make money from it. We thought we'd break even in several months. And now it is basically our major source of employment. Like, we had no clue going into it.
So we've talked in some other podcasts about why a place works versus those that don't. Like, we've all been on those Airbnb forums and people cry a lot about why people don't come and book, right? but it seems like part of it is just where you are, its location. And I think it works. It's for us too. But other than its location, is that the big thing, or why do you think it works in your case?
I actually was surprised the location worked as well as it did. I thought that was going to be our big failing, was the location. I mean, New Orleans is that's a city that's a work in constant progress. And, some streets are better than other streets and whole neighborhoods seem fine. And then some blocks are a little less so. And our block is a pretty solid, well-inhabited, reasonably safe block, which is great and all. But it's near a very major loud avenue. We've got sort of a, abandoned eightplex, used to be a crack house next door. We're about a mile outside of the quarter. I really didn't think anyone was going to want to stay here because it's a little sketchy, for a visitor. I don't think this is the first thing people think of when they think New Orleans. I always thought people were going to get here and be like, yikes, a real neighborhood. Wow, a real urban landscape. No one has ever mentioned it. So it turned out the location is exactly what people actually wanted, which they want to be about a mile away from Bourbon Street, which is great because that means we're not attracting the sort of people who want to be on Bourbon Street every day.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's for us, like right now we're in Amsterdam and we're definitely staying in an Airbnb that's not off the beaten path. Like, it's not where the tourists are. And that's kind of what we wanted, so we can just go downstairs and we
go
can
to the grocery store.
A shop where regular people shop, and it makes the trip so much more fun. And I guess that's part of the
beauty of Airbnb is like you're in an actual neighborhood. You're not on Bourbon Street, people really like this neighborhood because it physically looks a lot like the quarter. The housing stock is very similar. It's a very old neighborhood. It's a historic neighborhood. But it is off the beaten path from the craziness, which is also why we love it. So I don't know why I was surprised like other people loved it, but it still surprises me. So have you and your husband, Brian, stayed in Airbnbs yourself?
I have. Only once. I went to New York for a nursing contract and actually had a really hard time nailing down a space, probably because I needed one for quite a long time. And it was funny to go and be in an Airbnb. It was hard to not pick apart every little thing that I perceived they got wrong. But I realized they had just sort of started out, and I was just like, I'm going to leave them a very friendly list of things that would help, like, say, a bedside table. It seems so obvious to me now, but even when we started off, we spent a lot more time with our guests in the beginning. I think mostly because we slightly paranoid maybe and just wanted to sort of meet the guests and talk to them and make sure they weren't crazy or whatever. And they were all lovely. And we had a big backyard. They would come and sit and we'd chat. And those first few guests saved our lives. I joke about the bedside table because we didn't have one either. There was only a bedside table on one side of the bed for no reason. I just didn't do it. And so that was pointed out to me, some kitchen appliance things were really, really helpful stuff that totally changed the comfort of the space. So we did learn a lot from our guests. But I could go on for days about what was missing in that Airbnb when I was a guest.
Yeah, we definitely are like that too. And we actually are lucky that we stayed in so many Airbnbs before we started hosting, 15 or something. So we were very, very meticulous because every time we went to an Airbnb, like you said, no bedside table. I'm like, where am I supposed to put anything?
Anything.
Clothes.
Yeah, there were some surprises there. But yeah, I had not ever stayed in one before we started doing this. So I really was just relying on, my version of common sense about hotels and what people might expect in a space, and then combing through zillions of listings to see what other people were doing and what they weren't doing, so that I could sort of be like, oh, that's why you're not booked and sort of figure it out and, alter stuff that we had upstairs, learning about whether we needed cable or not, like stuff. Mostly I was on a constant mission to try to save us money so that we weren't just not making any money. Like so I really was looking to see what people really, really wanted and needed just to keep costs down.
That's the same with us too.
So can we walk through its process some, just so we get an idea of how you run your Airbnb? Like, the first would be like, so who takes care of reservations and handling timing of guests and stuff like that?
Oh, this is going to be a very fast answer. The answer is I do everything.
Okay.
I do all of it.
So
Brian is on repair detail. Like he's in charge of fixing things when they break, anything that has to do with anything, more than 6 feet off the floor, because I don't get on ladders. And the rare occasions that I have a shift or I'm out of town, he actually does do the turnover. But in terms of all the communication, all the booking, and the vetting of guests, that is all on me.
So then what is reservation process like? It's for you? Is it just people just... it's not instant book, right? People have to email you, and then are you picking dates for them? Like, how's that work?
Pretty much. I don't use instant book. I have a lot of problems with the concept of instant book, and also it seems a little buggy. So I just don't trust it to work properly. So I don't use it. And I do like to vet my guests briefly, but still, I'm not asking them for proof of employment and copies of their passport or anything like that. I just sort of want to make sure they're people and not scamming me in some way. And that doesn't take much. I mean, they contact me. I rarely pre-approve guests. That's a new tool that Airbnb rolled out like within the last year that never really sat well with me personally. So when someone contacts me with dates, if it's within the next 3 months, I will probably book them, no problem. If it's something a little farther out, I will engage them more in conversing about their trip and what it's for, because I'm worried about cancellations. Particularly for like major events like Mardi Gras and stuff like that, because people do tend to plan that stuff way in advance.
And are you only on Airbnb, or are you also on other sites?
No, we're only on Airbnb, because when we originally started looking at this, and the neighbor that I spoke of earlier next door, he only uses VRBO. And we got to sort of see his situation unfold for a couple of months before we started. And his clientele was much, much different than what I thought would be appropriate for the apartment and the location. He was getting a much older clientele from VRBO, and he was having more trouble due to the location. Like he was having more people sort of complain and or be nervous, sort of unnecessarily so, but whatever, about the neighborhood and about the block. And I just did not want to have those conversations constantly. And he did. So we aimed at Airbnb also because they didn't require any money up front. And I didn't like the idea of paying VRBO more money to get a better placement in the search. That bothered me.
We really
not that Airbnb's search placement makes any sense, because it doesn't, but at least I don't have to give them money for it.
So when you're communicating with guests, are you setting expectations for them? Like, I know there are some hosts that are like very like strict about rules. Like, you must read the rules and you must say that you read the rules, and we don't do that, and I'm sure you're not like that either. But like, how are you like setting expectations for people? Like, maybe you are. I don't know. But
yes and no, both. Because I do cram a lot of information onto the listing page to try to not get lots of obvious questions that, like, I put as many rules as I can on the page without it just looking insane. Like, it's pretty long. My listing is a lot longer than in a lot of people's listings. And I just sort of do that because I know that Airbnb will hold people to what is written in the listing and what is expressly put in your house rules on the site. So I put the big rules there, like the really important ones. Everything else is kind of an after, like little things about how the house works and how to not break the windows, things like that. So that stuff's all in the house book that people don't see until they arrive. And I just sort of guide them to the book. I do think a lot of people read it, but I don't want to berate guests with crazy, huge lists of rules. But every once in a while, something really stupid happens. I'm like, oh, I guess I have to make a rule about dyeing your hair pink in my bathroom, in my clawfoot tub with my white towels. Like, who would have thought you had to make a rule about that? But apparently I did, because it happened twice.
Whoa, twice? Really?
Twice. One pink, one purple. I was so mad. So I don't want to beat people up about the rules, and I don't really when communicating with them, every once in a while I'll get one that seems like they clearly didn't read it. I'll point them towards the, like they'll say like, "Where are you?" Like, wow, you need to learn how this works, and I will give them a quick guide to basic Airbnb 101. And I will, sort of send them to the listing and say, read all of it before you throw out a reservation request, and when people don't, I make sure to talk to them first. Sometimes you just get reservation requests from people who don't say anything, and I need them to know that we do have some rules that they should be aware of just in case. And no one's ever really broken any of my major rules once they were written down.
Good.
Okay, so if you booked someone, the appointed day comes and they come to your apartment, how do you do them getting in?
Like the check-in.
Like, how do they physically get in and all that?
Yeah, and like, do you show them around the apartment? Like, what's the way you do it?
Sometimes. I used to do it all the time because we used to have regular, like Yale locks with keys, so when we had real keys, there was always waiting for someone to come get the key, showing them how to use the key. There were 2 keys because we have a locked gate in front of the house, and then they also had a key to the apartment. And after a few months of, getting kind of burned with people saying they were going to be here at noon and then showing up at like 6 and me having, busting my dinner plans, we put in the keypad lock, which totally changed everything. So I went through a long phase where I was like, I'm not checking anybody because I didn't have to, and I was so psyched. But really, I feel like we get better reviews when I do meet them and check them in, and I personally do sort of feel better having met the guests. So I will meet them. I'm probably 65 to 75% of the time I will meet them. Also, sometimes you have guests who you can just plainly see need you desperately to check them in. Like what, like you can, once you do some emailing back and forth with guests, you can tell like, oh, okay, you really do need to be reassured by this whole Airbnb thing. They're worried that they're going to show up and get locked out and nothing's going to work. Like they don't even believe what they're real. And it's like, personally, I wouldn't throw hundreds of dollars at a website if I was that paranoid about it not working out. But a lot of people do. So I always meet those people and try to make them feel more at ease. I also make a bigger effort to meet guests from overseas because I really want to know how sort of street savvy they are. I want to know that they're not going to be walking around town with cameras around their necks at 10 p.m., that kind of thing. Like they get like a real face-to-face safety speech from me.
Yeah, I want to agree with you on meeting people because we have a key code too. Like it'd be so easy to be like, oh, you're getting in at 6. We'll just give you the key code. But I find that it's so much better for people to respect your space and feel like, this is a place that's loved by, these people, that they'll respect it as well if you're showing them around.
Yeah, it really is true. And it's funny when I do it, people react. I mean, like no one ever checks in by themselves and then texts me, oh my God, this place is so awesome. You obviously put so much love into it. Nobody does that. But when you're with them and they are like, you're walking them through, for me, the 2 rooms, it's very small. They don't really need a tour. But when I'm showing them where stuff is and how things work, they always compliment the space. And it makes me feel great because I forget all the time that like it is a special space. And it really sort of makes me feel all fluffed up and happy when people see it and compliment and know that we put a lot of work into it.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, just for a sense of so people understand, how booked are you? I mean, are you booked like 25 nights a month?
You know what? We're booked. We've been doing this, I think, since January of 2012. And I think so. Is that true? I think that's true. Yeah. Wow. And that first year, what is that right? I might be making that up. No, 3 whole years. That's true. That first year was more booked than not, but we'd go through long stretches without. And then over time, the more reviews we've gotten, the more reviews you get, the more requests you get. And so we've been very booked. I went back and looked. We've had 15 unbooked days since January. And
what?
Yeah, I'm a busy girl. Of those 15 days, 12 of them were just orphan days because we have a 3-night minimum. So, depending on how people book, sometimes you'll have like an odd Thursday where there just isn't anybody there. So of those 15 days, 12 of them were just orphans. And then one was some like weird, weekend where apparently no one wanted to be in New Orleans. But we've been booked like crazy.
So just kind of talking about that. I mean, when you and I have been emailing back and forth. I mean, you are a trained professional nurse, but this is now your main source of income. Like
Pretty
this
much.
is your job.
Yeah, it really feels like a full-time job. Just because, I mean, when the guests are here, I mean, there's getting the space ready. There's that. That doesn't take too terribly long, but it is still a lot of work. And there's tons of laundry. There's endless laundry, and then there's cleaning. But even when the guests are here, I'm on call 24 hours a day for these people. Like I put a note in the book after someone contacted me at like 2 a.m. asking me where to find pizza. I really never wanted that to happen again because that's just silly. So I put in the guidebook, please just limit contacting me from between like 8 a.m. and midnight, unless it's a super big emergency, in which case just call 911 instead, because clearly something horrendous has gone down. But they're contacting me all the time. Like I am full-time, phone on, constantly talking to people and fielding reservations and talking to guests and doing all that stuff. And it is a lot more work than I ever expected.
Yeah.
I thought this was going to be just passive income, no big whoop. This is not passive income. This is a ton of work.
Not at all.
It's definitely not like having full-time renters where they just sign a contract for a year and then pay you every month. It definitely is hospitality.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, and I have a long history in the restaurant business. I was a waitress and a bartender and a hostess for years on end before I became a nurse. I have a basic understanding of basic hospitality and customer service, which I think is a huge help, just because since I don't travel very much, that's the knowledge I kind of rely on to try to make people as comfortable and happy as possible, and I feel like a lot of the stuff you hear in the forums, a lot of people are jumping into this kind of blindly because it's certainly a great way to make money, but you really have to know how to handle people, and not all people are good at dealing with the public or being in customer service. That's why not everyone does it, and it really is a hospitality job.
Yep, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, it seems like whenever I risk it and get into the Airbnb forums, I see these people, it seems like they get into it because they have this fantasy of what they think it's going to be and how they're going to like make breakfast full, and it's going to be like they're going to have tea with everyone, and they realize like it's not that at all.
And some people do that way, which fascinates me. Like it is a very, very different thing. Even though these people are in my house, I mean, they are completely separate from me. I am fascinated by the hardcore, I rent 2 separate bedrooms out of my own home to 2 separate people. That's wild to me. You want to talk about a lot of work. Like that is intense. I don't know that I am made of that stuff.
That's like a different level. Like anytime I look at the forums and someone's like, saying some nightmare, I'm like, oh, they're talking about someone who's like in the room right next to them.
like I just rented them a room, but they're like in my living room just watching TV. Like, why are they just sitting in the room? Yeah.
I finally stopped responding to there's certain sort of complaints that pop up all the time. And one of my favorite ones to sort of, be a bit of a host sniper with was, I rented out my room and they keep using the kitchen and they're here for 8 weeks. You're like, so you were going to rent to someone for 8 weeks and not let them use your kitchen? Like, how are they supposed to eat? Like, why do you think that's worth $150 a day?
Yeah, I read one host just real quick on the same topic, and she was like, "Do people expect to use the bathroom?" It's like I don't even know how to begin to even respond to that. Like I'm just like, what? No.
So here's a big one. It's for us, and we love to hear how did you do it, but we're always into the extra stuff,
the amenities.
The amenities. I feel like that's what seals the deal for us in making people happy. Did you do that? Like, what do you offer, or how do you feel about that?
Well, when we started doing this, in my head, the reason I thought people would choose to use Airbnb over hotel would have to be the kitchen, because hotel rooms don't have kitchens. So to me, in my brain, the idea of having a functioning kitchen is why people were using Airbnb in the first place. Now, this is not actually the case, but this is how I made it up in my head. So I was very careful about making a completely workable kitchen, because that would be a big draw, which it was not, because no one comes to New Orleans to cook dinner. They just don't. They come here to eat out. So we did make some modifications to the kitchen, but the amenities in the kitchen are pretty tricked out. Like, it's not expensive stuff, but all the stuff is there. A million wine openers and pancake flippers of many sizes, spices, oil, vinegar, because I cook all the time, and not having those things is annoying. So that to me is a major amenity, to have an actual functioning way to cook a couple of eggs, or some pancakes. That seems to be all anyone ever cooks here. As far as amenities, I started leaving out shampoo and conditioner. I'll go to Target or Walmart. I'll pick up a whole mess of travel size stuff. And I've cut down on some of those because some of them just get swiped. I don't get toothpaste anymore because the people are just leaving with the toothpaste because they just do. But the shampoo and conditioner and body soap, I think, is really important, because who travels with soap? I don't travel with soap.
Yeah. We're at an Airbnb apartment right now in Amsterdam, and I got here and I'm like, getting ready to take a shower. And I'm like, oh my God, they don't have any shampoo. I had to go buy some.
Yeah, no. See, I think shampoo is a necessity. That's terrible. I think, yes, shampoo, people seem very happy to have. We've been having a hard time kind of with snacks, because as much as I would love to leave people yummy, healthy snacks, no one was eating the bananas and they'd go bad, and I just didn't like the waste. So we leave them granola bars, and we have a local potato chip company that's very beloved, that's sort of very New Orleans and has very weird New Orleans flavors. Like, I don't know, there's a Tabasco one and there's like a dill pickle flavor. So I leave out little bags of those. In the summer, I stock the fridge with water. I'm loath to use bottled water for myself, but there's kind of no other way to work it in the apartment. So I put bottled water in the fridge just because it's so hot. And I sort of assume that anyone traveling here in August will be shocked by the heat. And what is better than opening the fridge and having icy cold water? So I do that.
You're the best host. You're even though you're saying, oh, I don't travel very much, what people need. Those are things that are so important, and they're so little,
Yeah, and they're little, and it's cheap. It's no skin off my nose to buy a bunch of bottled water at Costco. It's like $3 for 40 bottles of water. Yeah. So that always feels good to do. I leave sunblock in the bathroom, because that's another thing I think people totally don't pack. Yep. So spray sunblock I leave in there. And then if the weather is going to be really crappy, I'll put microwave popcorn upstairs, because we have Netflix and lots of DVDs. The corner store does not have microwave popcorn, so I'd hate for them to run out in the rain only to be totally disappointed by the lack of popcorn. So I leave that in there too. And for special occasions, I do get creative. Like, if someone says it's their anniversary, I will buy a cheap bottle of champagne and put it in the fridge with a note. Yep. I have baked people birthday cakes. That's fun for me. I get a huge kick, and also I get to have a small carrot cake for myself, so everybody wins.
We love to do that too. Someone was staying on their honeymoon at our house, which is amazing. I'm like, wow, you chose our house to have your honeymoon, and we'll put champagne in the fridge with a note.
Yeah.
It's the least you can do,
Yeah, we actually have honeymooners right now. I think this is our fourth set of honeymooners. And it feels really neat. Really? You want to spend your honeymoon in my little 1-bedroom apartment? That is awesome.
Yeah, I know. That's sweet.
You talked about people coming and they check in. Now, these people aren't actually inside of your house so much, but it's attached to your house. So yes. What is your interaction with them throughout their stay?
Well, the thing about people who coming to New Orleans is you can pretty much guarantee they're going to be out of the house from 10 in the morning until probably midnight, because they're just out doing their thing. So there really is a pattern. People tend to sleep a little late, and then they get dressed, they go out, they come back at around 5 p.m. to get ready for dinner, and they go back out. So we don't see much of them necessarily. Sometimes I will park myself on the porch to ensure that I catch them coming or going, just so I can either say hi real quick or, whatever, just to sort of make my presence known. But in terms of interaction, I kind of let them take the wheel on that. I used to hover. It took me many months to quit hovering. So mostly I either check them in personally or I don't. If I don't, I do shoot them a text a couple of hours after they said they were going to be here, if they told me when they were going to be here, which they mostly don't. And I just say, I just make sure they checked in okay. If they need anything to let me know. And, for the millionth time, I mentioned, that super handy house book they should totally read from cover to cover, just so they know all the rules. And I do text them midway through the trip, like at the exact halfway point at around noon, I will shoot them a text checking in on them to see if they need anything and if they need towels swapped out, things like that. And that's kind of it. Occasionally we've gotten guests. I could tell immediately from when the communication started that these were our people. Like sometimes you just get guests and you're just like, you're my people. and you jive with them so well. Like, so we have occasionally had like porch night where we'll just be like, you're here for 5 days. We think you're so cool. Come down and hang out on the porch and we'll like have punch and just shoot the breeze before you go to dinner. So we will invite guests to do that sometimes. Like if we hit it off super well.
Do you see them before they check out? Or are you just like, checkouts this time? Later, Yeah.
A lot of, because a lot of people, most of our guests fly, probably like 85% of our guests fly in. And for whatever reason, they take really early flights out. So we don't really see them before they leave. Our checkout time is 11, which is kind of early, but we have so many same day changeovers. And I need the time to really check the space. And sometimes I forget that there are no clean bath mats. So I have to clean all the bath mats and wait for them to dry and, stuff like that. So I really do want 3 to 4 solid hours to get the apartment ready for the next guest. So people really tend to be gone. Like before I can even wake up and say, oh, we never met, I'd love to say hi. They're like, we are at the airport. It's 8 a.m. Like they're already gone, So we have a really simple checkout procedure. I don't ask them to do much. I think it's weird to ask people to strip all the beds and put them in the wash, start the washer. Like I've stayed in cabins that do that. And I thought it was a bit much to ask me to start your laundry, So I really just asked them to wrap up the trash and leave it on the landing just so we don't get ants. And that's kind of it.
I mean, it's crazy. Like, I hear about the people that would rent on like, I guess we're like Cape Cod.
Cape Cod and stuff like that.
Or the South Shore. I think it's like another time.
Another generation.
When like they expected you to like a vacuum and to like wipe and everything down.
Bring your own sheets.
Bring your own sheets and towels.
Crazy.
It's just so crazy.
Yeah. I get a lot of people asking if they should bring towels. And I mean, people from overseas have asked me this question. Americans have asked me this question. I've never understood it. And my husband's mother from Massachusetts actually was like, you mean you supply towels? I'm like, well, yeah. Who wants to fly with a bunch of towels?
Yeah.
No, I mean, like our area is the same way because we're like, like the cabin capital of our area, and people will write us, do you need us to bring sheets? We're like, what are you talking? No. What?
Okay, so this could become a whole podcast on itself, but let's try. We can try and keep this short and sweet. Cleaning. So I think like us, if you do all the cleaning it yourself.
I do.
So although you're by it yourself, there's at least 2 of us. Can you walk through its process of cleaning and why did you choose to do it all on your own?
In my fantasy, when we first started, I was like, well, when we start making some extra money from this, I will maybe pay someone else to do this just because I hate cleaning a lot. And if you looked at, my portion of the house, you'd be like, ooh, whoa, yeah, you hate cleaning a lot. I'm very good at tidying up, but deep cleaning is totally not my thing. And that space, that rental is so clean. You could lick every surface in that rental. It's so clean. And it's taken me some time to sort of get the cleaning in the right order and know what I don't have to do every single time. Because at first I was doing all of it every single time. So it's like every 3 days, because we, like 3 to 4 days, that's most of our stays are 3 to 4 nights long. I was going up there, changing out the laundry, vacuuming the mattress, vacuuming the couches, steam cleaning the floor, mopping everything. Like, it's ridiculous. And it was taking forever. And now I've sort of learned, like, okay, you do not need to steam the floor every 3 days. Like, that's just sort of insane. We don't have a lot of rugs up there. As much as I love rugs, and it would probably really make it quieter downstairs here where I live, because there's a lot of clomping going on up there because people leave their shoes on and stuff. But that for me is a vacuuming situation and a stain situation that I don't really want to deal with. So the living room doesn't have a rug, which just makes it easier for me to clean. And then the bedroom has like little rugs on each side because who wants to get out of bed and put their feet on a cold floor? So those are there. The cleaning process is fast. Like I kind of whiz through there. I get the laundry off the bed, do that first. The only thing that truly needs to be deep cleaned every time is the bathroom. Because I feel like going into a rental, you really want that bathroom to look like no one's ever used it ever. So that I put more scrubbing bubbles go into that process. And everything else is kind of a quick surface wipe. Like it's an old house, so it generates a lot of dust. And it's very bright and sunny in there. So you see every speck of dust on everything. So, all the flat surfaces get wiped every single time. And that's kind of it. Like I'll steam once a week now. I steam off the floor once a week.
You said once you started to make money, you thought about hiring somebody. Well, it sounds like you're making that money now. So why not hire somebody?
Well, because of how we set up the distribution of proceeds, I shall say, from the Airbnb into our bank accounts. We do charge a cleaning fee. I believe it's $50, and I take it. So that is my personal spending money reward because I do that work. That's the reason, basically, is because I don't think anyone will do it for $50 because I think that's probably too little for cleaning ladies around here. And the scheduling of it is just too bizarre. Like it's just, I used to not take reservations far enough in advance to really have a handle on, what days I would even need someone to come clean. Now I do, but now I've gotten into such a good pattern with cleaning it without going insane that I don't mind doing it. I don't mind. And I like the extra change for myself.
I don't know how people pay a cleaner to come when they need them to, because we aren't quite as booked as you, but we hope to be one day. But we've had a couple of months where we're like 25 nights and we have back-to-back people. I don't know how you would even schedule a cleaner to come. And I can't imagine that they wouldn't charge at least $75
to $100. I mean, we're like, you have to be there at noon and you have to be gone by 3.
And what if they don't? Or what if their car breaks down? Or what, like that just, it's an element left up to chance that I'd rather not deal with. It makes me nervous. Think they wouldn't make it.
So do you find, because you've been doing this, like you said, since 2012, have you had any repeat customers like, hey, we're coming back?
No, one. They haven't come yet. We've got one repeat customer. We're so excited. They came for a week in January, this nice couple. I think they're in Portland, and we didn't even meet them. And they had a great time. These like slightly older people. I think they're in their late 50s, maybe early 60s. And they totally loved it. We never got to meet them. They left, and 2 days after they checked out, they sent me an email that was like, we loved it so much, we got to come next year for the same week. And I was like, that is so adorable. We don't book that far in advance, but I mean, obviously, contact us again when the time comes. We would love to have you back. And he really did. Like, he contacted me every 3 months. I was like, don't forget us. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to block those dates for this guy because he really means it. So we do have our first repeat guest coming in January. I'm totally excited.
Wow. So you're that booked and it's all just first time people. I mean, I guess that's really a good thing about your town is that people really want to come and hang out in it's New Orleans.
I never really expected any repeat business for that reason. Like, it's such a tourist town. So most of our guests really have never even been to New Orleans before, much less used Airbnb before. So just they're getting all the sort of, new experiences thrown at them coming here and staying in this house and being in New Orleans for the first time and using Airbnb for the first time. Like, so I like getting newbies. It used to make me nervous and it totally doesn't anymore.
Yeah, we're the same way. But, on that same subject, have you had any nightmare guests? I mean, other than people who are like dyeing their hair.
Yeah, other than that, like true nightmares. I mean, define nightmare. I mean, I've definitely had a couple of incidents that stick out that were extremely disappointing, and some had a bigger effect than others. Some were just disappointing, like, the girl who said she was bringing her cousin and she brought like 3 cousins. Like, that sucked, but I also was a weenie. I didn't confront her about it because we had just started out and I just didn't even want to deal. And they were pretty harmless. So I was just like, I'm just going to pretend this isn't happening. And it's only 3 days and whatever. I would not handle that the same way now at all. But for nightmares, I would think the worst We had a guest come, a young man came with his friend for the first week of Mardi Gras. They were pretty young. They were like 24, 25. And, there was some puking. I sort of commend him for not puking all over the floor or whatever, or he didn't even try to puke in the bathtub. He decided to puke out the window, which was really unfortunate because, he made it. There was nothing on the windowsill, but it took me weeks to find. Like it was spring had just started, so it was warming up, and I was like, "What is that smell?" And it just took a while to realize, like, oh, there's vomit down the side of my house. That's okay. That's good to know. Oh that was really bad. So that was kind of a nightmare. We had a ceiling collapse. Oh, actually, it was the same guy. They had some problems with the shower. I think they were showering with the liner not inside the tub. And I came home to my hallway having collapsed completely like this. And actually there's still a 3-foot hole in the ceiling because we just haven't gotten around to fixing it yet. So that was bad. That's probably the worst actual physical damage the house has sustained was the vomit and the hole. And then the other thing that was actually that I still think of and I know I would handle differently now is we had a big domestic fight and I went to go break it up, which looking back on it was deeply stupid. But I was so angry. I was so angry that these people had thought it was okay to have this gigantic screaming fight in my home. And I just sort of gambled and thought, like, I'm going to go bust on their door like the angry landlady in my bathrobe because it's midnight and I am going to let them have it. And I did. And they stopped. But it was bad. That was probably the one, that was something we never, ever thought would be an issue. Like, we thought we'd have some puke. We thought maybe we'd have some plumbing issues. Like we assume those things happen. We never would have thought like, oh, a fight. Okay. That's something we actually need to consider.
Yeah.
Wow.
But, if you think of all the people that have stayed, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's good odds.
How well behaved. Like when we first started doing this and we were telling people that we were about to rent on Airbnb, their first thing is just like, well, aren't you afraid like people are going to come and like bring dirty dogs in your house and take a knife and cut open all of your couches and pour hot sauce all over your bed? And I gotta tell people like these are people like us. Like
they're just people.
Why do you just assume the worst?
Yeah, I definitely at first had those fears only because it was such a strange idea to me to have strangers in the house for a brief period of time and all the things that could go wrong. But honestly, kind of nothing. It's just life and things happen and spills happen and tears happen and dirty dogs do happen, but it is not the end of the world. I just don't want to be taken advantage of. Like I can live with a mess and I can live with some bad behavior because sometimes people are naughty. I can live with all those things. I just don't like the concept of being taken advantage of because it is my home and I love it and I live here and I put a lot of work into it. But for the most part, people are fine. They're just people going on vacation. They don't want to ruin anything. They want to have a good time.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, again, when I'm on those, when I'm on the Airbnb forums and if you see a person come on and they're like, this person's doing this thing and I don't like it. And in my head, I'm always just like, well, why don't you just go tell them that? Yeah. Like, is that what you mean by about taking charge these days?
Yeah, I'm a very non-confrontational person. And unfortunately my husband is too. So we're quite we're not great at, dealing with that sort of thing or facing people, even though we should by rights be able to like put our foot down and say like, this is our house and you can't do, whatever. And I don't know. I really don't like doing it. Now I feel much more comfortable doing it. Like there's so little crap I'd be willing to put up with at this point, and I would absolutely confront somebody about it. I worry sometimes because you go on the forums and you see a lot of people and you're like, yeah, this person is in your house right now as we speak doing this weird creepy thing or this thing you don't like that actually is no big deal or whatever. They're using your kitchen. Like you need to face them. They're in your freaking house. Like, why wouldn't you face them and say, we discussed that you're not allowed to actually use the bathroom, or whatever. Like, it's weird to me that people can't do it. But then I think back and I'm like, you know what? When I first started, there's no way I would have faced anybody like that. Because in my head, I was just like, well, they're paying me and I did take their money. And it's just the wrong way to think of it. Like, you are providing a service and that's great, but there are still parameters and you should be able to talk to people. Again, I think a lot of the hosts just flat out don't have people skills for the public necessarily.
Right.
Now, you talked about when you go out of town, your husband kind of takes care of things. Now,
Yes.
What happens when both of you go out of town? Is there like a caretaker that keeps things going?
It never happens. Which is kind of
So in
sad.
3 years, the two of you have never gone out of town.
We went like once and we blocked it in advance. We really would rather make money than do much of anything else. So we have a tendency to not, to block off time so that we can go away. It's not a thing we've done more than once. We are doing it in November. We blocked off a weekend so we could go visit some friends, and I'm totally excited about that. But we have ended up stuck kind of being tied to the B&B because it is so booked, and it's hard to say no to money.
So why not find a friend that could watch over things?
In a pinch, there are a couple of people I could call upon to, like, if we really had an emergency and got called away, there are maybe two people that I would totally trust to do it. One of them actually manages other people's Airbnb for a living, so she's an obvious choice. And I would do that, and I would pay them to do that. But it's not something I don't think I'd get comfortable doing on a regular basis necessarily. Like, maybe if we didn't live here, I'd feel better about having someone manage it. But it's something about it is inside of my home, it's my house, and anything can go wrong when I'm not in it that makes me just want to have one of us here all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like a luxury problem. Like, you're so booked that you're like, we don't leave because we're so popular.
Isn't that a bummer? We just can never get out of town. So we just travel separately. It's basically what we do when we need a vacation. Yeah. So it is a luxury. It's a luxury problem indeed. But I'm proud of us for having blocked off, 4 days in November, and it's been eating at us ever since we did it, because November is one of our biggest months, and the idea of like losing those 4 nights it's hard.
So it sounds like you're pretty happy with your business. I mean, is there anything that you would change? On
my end, no. I mean, I have a wish list a mile long about Airbnb and how it works, the inner workings of it. There's lots of things there I would change in terms of policy and in terms of the website itself, which is so janky so much of the time. Other than that, honestly, I don't think I would change a thing. I don't think there is anything I would really, really change. It goes really smoothly considering the volume. Things go really well most of the time. I think one thing I guess I would change, it doesn't affect us too terribly much, but in terms of New Orleans and Airbnb itself, there's lots of legal wrangling issues that are happening down here that are not kind of being handled or managed or anything. So from a legal perspective, in making hosts' lives easier, that's the kind of stuff I would change that. Like, I would want something done about how the city handles short-term rentals. Like, that's something I think that needs a lot of attention paid to it. But in terms of the inner workings of how we do things, it's smooth sailing. I love it.
Good.
So I guess then my last question would be, because it's going so well and you're doing so well, would you ever want to start another one? Like, do you guys eye its property around you and buy an old junky house and fix it up?
No, because a couple of reasons. One, the prices of old junky houses here have quadrupled in the last 4 years, so we can't afford an old junky house anymore. Two, the legal stuff that I mentioned briefly, that it's so tricky to even try to do that now, and I would say it's actually dangerous. I wouldn't suggest to anyone that they try, not in New Orleans right now. I do sort of have my eyes on Brian's studio, which is the upstairs back half of the house, which holds our guest room and has a bathroom, and it has a separate entrance already. We've had some talking, some squabbling about that, because, now that we're doing so well, all I can think of is like, we could totally double our income, man. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? It's such a pretty little space, and it's perfect for a couple, and it's just a great little, 3-room space. But I don't know that he's really going to give me that. I don't know that he'll ever say yes to that. But in terms of expansion, that's on my mind. Yeah.
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 I think that's normal.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you for letting us interview you, Bekah.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we'll be able to come visit your space.
I mean, actually, we have a job, we still do video work, and we're going to be there in May. And
I think it's next May.
yeah.
Oh.
So, I don't know. Maybe we'll be able to squeeze in and book your place.
If you're not too booked already.
I would block days for you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.